There are moments when a child's words stop us in our tracks, when their explanation for something we thought was simple reveals depths of pain and wisdom that children should never have to possess, and when their strength in the face of unimaginable hardship reminds us what true courage looks like. Sometimes the bravest children are the ones who smile when they want to scream, who laugh when they want to sob, who carry burdens that would break most adults while still showing up for life with grace and determination. These are the stories that humble us, that remind us to look beyond behavior to the reasons behind it, and that show us how resilience can look like holding everything in until you finally find a safe place to let it out. If you believe that every child deserves to express their emotions freely, that strength isn't the same as emotional suppression, and that sometimes the people who seem the strongest are actually the ones who need the most support. Hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that remind us to see past the surface, to ask the deeper questions, and to create spaces where children can be honest about what they're really feeling. 9-year-old Lily Chen stood on the Little Big Shot stage wearing a bright yellow dress, her long black hair in 2 neat braids, her posture perfect and her smile polite, but somehow missing the carefree joy that usually radiated from children her age. Steve Harvey had already interviewed 3 kids that afternoon: a 5-year-old drummer who could keep perfect rhythm to any song, twin singers whose harmonies were breathtaking, and a young magician who had fooled everyone with his tricks. Now Steve stood with Lily, who had been featured on the show because of something unusual her teacher had noticed and submitted to the producers. Lily was a talented young artist who created incredibly detailed and emotionally complex drawings, but what made her case unique wasn't just her artistic ability. It was what her teacher had observed over 2 years of having Lily in her class. Lily never cried, not when she fell on the playground and scraped her knee badly enough to need stitches. Not when she got a disappointing grade on a test she'd studied hard for. Not when other kids were mean to her. Not at sad movies the class watched. Not ever. And her teacher, Mrs. Patterson, thought there was a story there that needed to be heard. Steve greeted Lily with his characteristic warmth, immediately noticing the composure that seemed unusual for a 9-year-old. "Well, hello there, young lady," Steve said with a big smile. "What's your name?" "Lily Chen, sir," she responded with perfect politeness. "I'm 9 years old and I'm from Sacramento, California." Steve sat down on the edge of the stage, bringing himself closer to her level. "So, Lily, I've been told you're an amazing artist. Is that true?" Lily nodded modestly. "I like to draw and paint. It helps me express things." "That's wonderful," Steve said. "And I understand there's something else unique about you, something your teacher noticed. Can you tell me about that?" Lily's expression didn't change, remaining calm and composed. "Mrs. Patterson says I never cry. She thinks that's unusual for someone my age." Steve raised his eyebrows. "Never cry? Like never ever?" Lily shook her head. "I haven't cried in 3 years, 2 months, and 6 days, she said with the precision of someone who had been counting. The audience made soft sounds of surprise at such a specific time frame. Steve's reporter instincts immediately told him there was a significant story behind this statement. 3 years, 2 months, and 6 days, Steve repeated. "That's very specific, Lily. Do you remember the last time you cried? What happened?" Lily's composure wavered for just a fraction of a second, a tiny flicker of pain crossing her young face before the calm mask returned. "I cried the day my mom died. That was the last time." The studio went completely silent. Steve Harvey, who had interviewed thousands of people and heard countless sad stories, felt his heart break for this little girl standing in front of him with such rigid control over her emotions. "Oh, sweetheart," Steve said gently, his voice immediately softening. "I'm so sorry you lost your mother. That must have been incredibly hard for you." Lily nodded, her expression still eerily calm. "It was hard, but I decided that day that I wasn't going to cry anymore, so I stopped." Steve looked at this 9-year-old who was speaking about her mother's death with the emotional detachment of someone describing the weather, and he knew they needed to go deeper into this conversation. The producers had told him that Lily's story was emotional, but they hadn't given him details, wanting Steve to discover it naturally during the interview. "Lily," Steve said carefully, "can you tell me about your mom? What was she like?" For the first time, a genuine emotion crossed Lily's face, a softness in her eyes, a slight smile. "My mom was beautiful and kind. She was a nurse and she helped people. She had long black hair like mine and she used to braid it the same way. She loved to sing, even though she wasn't very good at it, and she made the best dumplings. She always said I was her sunshine, and she told me every single day that she loved me more than all the stars in the sky." Lily's voice remained steady despite the painful subject matter, never wavering, never breaking. "What happened to your mom, if you don't mind me asking?" Steve said gently. Lily took a deep breath before answering. "My mom got cancer, breast cancer. The doctors tried to help her, but the cancer was too strong. She was sick for a year, and then 3 years, 2 months, and 6 days ago, she died in the hospital. I was 6 years old. The last thing she said to me was that I needed to be strong for my dad and my little brother, that I was the big sister now and they were going to need me to be brave. So when she died, I cried a lot that day, but then I decided I needed to do what Mom asked. I needed to be strong. And being strong means not crying, so I stopped. The audience was already in tears listening to this child explain her logic with such painful clarity. Steve had to take a moment to compose himself before responding. "Lily, honey," Steve said, his voice thick with emotion, "being strong doesn't mean you can't cry. Your mama didn't mean you should never cry again. She just meant she wanted you to be okay, to keep living, to take care of yourself and help your family. But crying is part of being human. It's how we let out sadness and pain. It doesn't make you weak." Lily shook her head, and for the first time there was a firmness in her voice, an insistence. "If I cry, Mr. Harvey, I won't be able to stop. I can feel all the sadness inside me like this huge ocean, and if I let even one tear out, the whole ocean will come pouring out and it will drown me. So I have to keep it all inside. I have to stay strong because my dad needs me to be strong and my little brother needs me to be strong, and if I break down, who's going to take care of them?" Steve was now openly crying, as was most of the audience and even the camera crew. This 9-year-old child had appointed herself the emotional caretaker of her entire family, had sealed away her grief so completely that she hadn't shed a single tear in over 3 years, and believed that allowing herself to feel would destroy her and everyone who depended on her. "Tell me about your dad and your brother," Steve said gently. "How are they doing?" Lily's expression softened again. "My dad is trying really hard. He works 2 jobs now because we need the money and because I think staying busy helps him not think about Mom so much. My brother Kevin is 6 years old. He was only 3 when Mom died, so he doesn't remember her as much as I do. Sometimes he asks me questions about her, and I tell him stories so he won't forget her. Dad gets really sad when we talk about Mom, so I don't bring her up around him. I don't want to make him sadder than he already is. Does your dad know you haven't cried in 3 years?" Steve asked. Lily shook her head. "He doesn't notice. He's too busy working and taking care of us, and I'm good at hiding how I feel. I smile and I help with Kevin and I get good grades and I'm polite so everyone thinks I'm okay. But I'm not okay, Mr. Harvey. I'm not okay at all." The dam was beginning to crack. Steve could see it in the way Lily's hands were trembling slightly, in the way her voice had started to waver even as her eyes remained dry. "Have you told anyone that you're not okay, sweetheart? Has anyone asked?" Lily shook her head again. "Mrs. Patterson, my teacher, she's the only one who noticed something was wrong. She saw that I never cry, not even when I should, and she got worried. She called my dad and told him she thinks I need to talk to someone, a counselor or a therapist. But Dad said we can't afford therapy right now, and besides, I seem fine to him. I get good grades, I'm well behaved, I help at home. He doesn't see what Mrs. Patterson sees. He doesn't know that I draw pictures of Mom every single night before I go to bed, or that I still sleep with her sweater that smells like her, or that sometimes I feel like I can't breathe because missing her hurts so much but I can't let it out." Steve stood up and walked over to Lily, kneeling down so they were eye level. "Lily, I need to tell you something very important, and I need you to really hear me, okay?" Lily nodded, her composure beginning to fracture. "You are 9 years old. 9. You are a child, sweetheart. You are not supposed to be the strong one who takes care of everyone else. You are not supposed to carry all this pain by yourself. You are not supposed to lock away your grief and pretend you're okay when you're breaking inside. Your mama loved you so much, and when she told you to be strong, she didn't mean you should stop being a little girl. She didn't mean you should never cry or never feel sad or never need help. She meant she wanted you to survive, to keep living, to find joy again someday. But you can't find joy if you're so busy being strong that you won't let yourself feel anything." Lily's lip began to tremble, the first crack in the armor she'd built around herself. "But if I cry, if I let myself feel it, it's going to hurt so much. I'm scared, Mr. Harvey. I'm so scared of how much it's going to hurt." Steve pulled Lily into a hug, and the moment his arms wrapped around her, something inside her broke. The child who hadn't cried in 3 years, 2 months, and 6 days began to sob. Not gentle tears, but deep, wrenching sobs that came from the very bottom of her soul, the accumulated grief of 3 years pouring out all at once. She cried for her mother who had died too young, for the childhood that had been stolen from her, for the burden she'd been carrying that no 9-year-old should ever have to carry, for the exhaustion of pretending to be okay every single day. Steve held her and let her cry, rocking her gently while the audience and crew watched with tears streaming down their own faces. "I miss my mommy," Lily sobbed into Steve's shoulder. "I miss her so much and I can't tell anyone because I have to be strong and I'm so tired of being strong. I just want my mom back, I want her to braid my hair and make dumplings and tell me she loves me. I want her to tuck me in at night and sing to me. I want my mommy. Steve's own tears fell freely as he held this grieving child. I know, baby girl, I know you miss your mama. Of course you do. She was your world and you were hers. And it's okay to miss her. It's okay to cry for her. It's okay to not be okay. You don't have to be strong all the time. Lily cried for several minutes, 3 years of suppressed grief finally finding release while Steve just held her and let her feel everything she'd been running from. Eventually, Lily's sobs began to slow, becoming hiccuping breaths as she exhausted herself emotionally. Steve pulled back and looked at her tear-stained face. How do you feel right now, sweetheart? Lily wiped her eyes, looking surprised. I feel lighter. Like something heavy I've been carrying just got a little bit lighter. Steve smiled gently. That's because you let some of that ocean out and you didn't drown. You're still here. You're still okay. And you know what? You're going to cry more and that's good. That's healing. That's how you honor your mama and honor yourself. Lily nodded, looking exhausted but somehow more peaceful than she had when she first walked onto the stage. Steve made a decision in that moment. Lily, where is your father? Is he here at the studio? Lily shook her head. He's at work. He couldn't take time off. My neighbor brought me here for the taping. Steve looked at the producers. Get Lily's father on the phone. I want to talk to him now. Within minutes, the producers had contacted David Chen, Lily's father, and had him on speakerphone. Mr. Chen, Steve said, this is Steve Harvey from Little Big Shots. I'm here with your daughter, Lily. Sir, we need to have a very important conversation about your daughter's well-being. David's voice came through the speaker, tinged with worry. Is she okay? Did something happen? Steve looked at Lily, who nodded permission for Steve to share what had happened. Mr. Chen, when's the last time you saw your daughter cry? There was a long pause. I don't know, not recently. Lily's always been very composed, very mature for her age. That's actually a problem, sir, Steve said gently. Your daughter just told me that she hasn't cried once in over 3 years, not since the day her mother died. She's been holding in 3 years of grief because she thinks she needs to be strong for you and for her son. She's been taking care of everyone else and neglecting her own emotional needs. The silence on the other end of the phone was heavy. Mr. Chen's voice, when it came, was thick with emotion and guilt. Oh God, I didn't know, I didn't realize, I thought she was doing so well. She never complained, never seemed sad. I thought she was resilient, that she'd bounced back. Steve continued. Your daughter just had a breakdown on my stage, sir. She finally let herself cry, finally let herself admit she's not okay. And that's good, that's healthy, but she needs professional help to process her grief. She needs therapy, she needs support, and she needs her father to tell her it's okay to not be strong all the time. David's voice broke. I can't afford therapy. I'm barely keeping us afloat with 2 jobs. I want to help her, but I don't know how. Steve had anticipated this. Sir, I'm going to help you. My foundation is going to cover the cost of therapy for Lily for as long as she needs it. We're going to connect you with a grief counselor who specializes in childhood bereavement. And we're going to provide family counseling for all 3 of you because this isn't just Lily's grief. This is your family's grief, and you all need to heal together. David Chen was crying now. Thank you so much. I failed my daughter. I was so focused on keeping us fed and housed that I didn't see she was suffering. Steve's voice was gentle but firm. You haven't failed her, sir. You've been surviving, doing the best you could under impossible circumstances. But now you have help. Now you can do better. And the first thing you need to do is come to this studio right now. Your daughter needs you. Take the rest of the day off work, get here and be with your child. She needs her dad. David agreed immediately. I'm leaving right now. Tell Lily I'm coming. Tell her I love her and I'm sorry I didn't see how much she was hurting. Steve relayed the message to Lily, who started crying again, but these were different tears. Tears of relief that her father finally knew that she didn't have to hide anymore. 45 minutes later, David Chen burst into the studio and ran to his daughter, scooping her up in his arms. Lily, baby, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't notice. I'm so sorry I made you feel like you had to be strong all the time. Lily wrapped her arms around her father's neck and cried into his shoulder. I miss Mommy, Daddy. I miss her so much and I didn't know how to tell you. David held his daughter tight, his own tears falling. I miss her too, sweetheart. I miss her every single day. And we should have been missing her together, talking about her together, crying together. I've been so scared of my own grief that I didn't make space for yours. That was wrong of me. I'm going to do better. We're going to do better. Steve watched father and daughter hold each other and cry, both of them finally allowing themselves to feel the grief they'd been suppressing, and he knew this was the beginning of their healing journey. The episode of Little Big Shots featuring Lily's interview aired 6 weeks later, and the response was overwhelming in its intensity and scope. The clip of Lily explaining why she never cried, and then finally breaking down and sobbing in Steve's arms, became one of the most viewed moments in the show's history, reaching over 600 million views across all platforms. Mental health organizations shared the episode as an example of childhood grief and the dangers of emotional suppression. Grief counselors used it in training programs to illustrate how children often try to protect their surviving parent by hiding their own pain. Schools across the country showed the episode to teachers and staff to help them recognize signs of suppressed grief in students. And most importantly, thousands of parents reached out to say they'd had no idea their children were struggling until they watched Lily's story and realized their own kids might be doing the same thing. The Chen family began therapy the week after Lily's appearance on the show. They saw a grief counselor specializing in childhood bereavement twice a week for the first 3 months, then once a week for the next year. In therapy, Lily learned that crying wasn't weakness but release, that grief was love with nowhere to go, and that honoring her mother's memory didn't mean suppressing her own emotions. She learned coping strategies for when the sadness felt overwhelming. She created a memory box filled with photos and mementos of her mother, and she started writing letters to her mom as a way to maintain connection while processing loss. David learned that his children needed him to model healthy grieving, that hiding his own pain to protect them was actually teaching them to hide their pain too. He learned to talk about his wife openly, to share happy memories along with acknowledging the sadness of loss, and to create space for his children to express their emotions without fear of making him sad. 6-year-old Kevin, who had been too young when his mother died to fully understand what had happened, finally got the chance to ask questions, to look at photos, to hear stories, and to grieve the mother he barely remembered. The family established new traditions to honor their mother's memory, making dumplings together on her birthday, visiting her grave on Mother's Day to leave flowers and share updates about their lives, and keeping a journal where each family member could write messages to her. These rituals gave them structure for their grief, while also celebrating the love that still connected them to the wife and mother they'd lost. Lily's art, which had always been emotionally complex, became even more powerful as she learned to channel her grief into creative expression. She created a series of paintings depicting memories with her mother, and when she was 11, these paintings were featured in a local gallery show that raised money for families dealing with pediatric cancer. 2 years after her appearance on Little Big Shots, Lily returned to the show for a special follow-up segment. She walked onto the stage, now 11 years old, taller and healthier looking, with a peace in her eyes that hadn't been there before. Steve greeted her with a huge hug. "Look at you, Lily. How are you doing?" Lily smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "I'm doing so much better, Mr. Harvey. I cry now when I need to cry, and I laugh when things are funny, and I feel my feelings instead of hiding them. It's still hard sometimes, missing my mom, but it doesn't feel like I'm drowning anymore." Steve beamed with pride. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. And I hear you've been helping other kids who are going through grief. Tell me about that." Lily's face lit up. "I started a program at my school called Art Heals. It's a club where kids who have lost someone important can come together and create art about their feelings. We paint and draw and make things, and we talk about the people we miss. Mrs. Patterson helps us run it, and we have about 15 kids in our group now. It helps them, and it helps me too." Steve turned to the cameras. Lily Chen, who stood on this stage 2 years ago and hadn't cried in 3 years, who was so scared of her own grief that she'd locked it away completely, is now helping other children learn to express their emotions through art. That's transformation. That's healing. That's what happens when we create safe spaces for children to be honest about what they're feeling. Lily spoke up. "Mr. Harvey, I want to say thank you. Thank you for not just accepting my answer when I said I never cried. Thank you for asking why. Thank you for making me feel safe enough to finally let it out. And thank you for helping my family get the therapy we needed. You saved us." Steve had tears in his eyes again. "Sweetheart, you saved yourself. You were brave enough to come on this show and tell your truth, even though you didn't know that's what was going to happen. You were brave enough to cry when you'd been holding it in for so long. You were brave enough to heal. I just gave you the platform and the support. You did the hard work." The segment ended with a surprise. Steve had arranged for Lily's art to be published in a book titled Painting Through Grief, A Child's Journey, with all proceeds going to provide free grief counseling for children who'd lost parents. The book featured Lily's paintings alongside her written reflections about each piece and about her healing journey. It became a bestseller in the children's grief literature category and was used by therapists, schools, and hospitals around the world to help children process loss. Lily also started speaking at grief conferences in schools, sharing her story and encouraging other children to express their emotions rather than suppressing them. Her message was always the same. Crying doesn't make you weak. It makes you human, and asking for help doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're brave enough to heal. Steve Harvey kept in touch with the Chen family over the years, checking in regularly and supporting Lily's advocacy work. He featured updates about her program on his talk show and had her as a guest multiple times to discuss childhood grief and emotional health. When Lily graduated high school with honors and a full scholarship to study art therapy in college, Steve sent her a video message that she played at her graduation party. "Lily, you've grown into an incredible young woman. Your mother would be so proud of the person you've become, not because you're strong in the way you thought you needed to be when you were 9, but because you're strong in the real way. You're strong enough to feel, strong enough to cry, strong enough to heal, and strong enough to help others do the same. Keep painting, keep growing, keep helping others find their voice through art. The world needs more people like you." Lily's story became a cornerstone in conversations about childhood grief, emotional suppression, and the importance of mental health support for children dealing with loss. The statistics were sobering. Over 7 million children in the United States had experienced the death of a parent or sibling, and many of them, like Lily, were suffering in silence because they thought being strong meant not showing emotion. Lily's public breakdown and subsequent healing journey gave permission to countless children to admit they weren't okay, to ask for help, to cry when they needed to cry. Parents who watched her story learned to look beyond surface behavior to the emotions underneath, to ask deeper questions when their children seemed too composed or too mature, to create space for grief rather than trying to rush past it. 10 years after that initial interview, Lily Chen was a 20-year-old college junior studying art therapy, working with children in hospitals and hospices, helping them use art to express emotions they didn't have words for. She had published 3 more books, started a nonprofit organization providing free art therapy to grieving children, and become a nationally recognized advocate for childhood bereavement support. She had also, after years of therapy and healing, learned to talk about her mother with joy and sadness intermingled, no longer afraid that feeling one emotion would drown her in the other. She kept a photo of her mother in her studio, and she talked to it while she painted, sharing her successes and struggles, maintaining the connection that death had altered but not severed. In an interview on the 10th anniversary of her Little Big Shots appearance, Lily reflected on that day. "I was so scared when I walked onto that stage. I thought I was just going to talk about my art and maybe mention that I didn't cry much. I had no idea I was going to break down completely, that Steve Harvey was going to ask the questions that would crack open everything I'd been holding in. But looking back, that was the moment my real healing began. Not when I stopped crying at age 6, but when I started crying again at age 9. That was when I learned that strength isn't about holding everything in, it's about having the courage to let it out. And that's the message I try to share with every child I work with. Your emotions are valid, your grief is real, and you don't have to carry it alone." If Lily's journey from suppressing all emotion to embracing healthy grief resonated with you, if you've ever felt like you had to be strong when you really needed to fall apart, if you believe that children deserve support in processing grief rather than being expected to just bounce back, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Share this story with parents, teachers, counselors, anyone who works with children, because Lily's story illustrates what so many kids are going through silently. Leave a comment sharing how you've helped a child process grief, or how you were helped as a grieving child, or what you learned from watching Lily's transformation. Let's create a community that gives children permission to feel their feelings, that provides resources for families dealing with loss, that understands the difference between resilience and suppression. Lily showed us that when a child never cries, it's not a sign that they're okay. It's often a sign that they've decided they can't afford to not be okay. She showed us that asking why matters more than accepting the surface answer. She showed us that healing requires feeling, that strength includes vulnerability, and that sometimes breaking down is the first step to breaking through. Steve Harvey lost words that day not because he didn't know what to say, but because sometimes witnessing a child's pain leaves you speechless before it moves you to action. Subscribe and share to help more children like Lily find the support they need, to help more families understand that grief counseling isn't a luxury but a necessity, to help more communities create spaces where children can be honest about their emotions without fear of judgment or being seen as weak. Because somewhere right now there's another Lily, another child who hasn't cried in years, who's taking care of everyone else while neglecting their own heart, who needs someone to ask why and really listen to the answer. Let's be those people who notice, who ask, who listen, and who help. Thank you for being part of this community that values emotional health, authentic expression, and the healing power of being seen, heard, and supported exactly as you are.